some recent polling on the 10-year anniversary of the Iraq War. We invaded with our shock and awe on March 19th of 2003. Was the Iraq War worth fighting? And American people think clearly that it was not. So, for example, a new HuffPost YouGov poll says 54% say not worth fighting the Iraq War, 24% say worth fighting, and 22% are not sure. They say, give me another 10 years, then I'll come back to you and give you a decision. All right, well, but clear majority saying not worth fighting. In fact, if you ask, in a Gallup poll, it was even clearer, 53 to 42 saying clearly a mistake. Iraq War was a mistake, okay? Were the benefits of the Iraq War not worth the cost? In an ABC News Washington Post poll, 58 to 38, clearly not worth the cost. Now, I'm going to show you why they're not worth the cost. Number of U.S. Soldiers killed, troops I should say, 4,488 service members killed. And by the way, very often this is neglected, also 3,400 contractors are killed. So actually the number dead are much larger than people normally report on our side. Wounded veterans, well, 32,221 of them in the Iraq War. Now how about civilians on the Iraqi side? That would be 134,000 Iraqi civilians killed, according to a recent report by Brown University. Was it worth it? Gee, I don't know. What the hell, what did we get out of it? Okay, so let's, first of all, I know what we lost. Not only did we lose all those good people, whether they were the U.S. troops or they were the Iraqi civilians, but we also lost a tremendous amount of money. Same Brown University report, estimated cost of the war so far, $2.2 trillion. When you add interest and the continuing bills that we have to pay over the next 40 years, that can go up to $6 trillion. Was it worth it? Well, what do we get? Well, we found the weapons of mass destruction, right? And of course, as you all know, there were no weapons of mass destruction. Well, Saddam was about to invade us, right? Nope, not about to invade us at all, not even close. That's a comical idea. Remember when Condoleezza Rice said it, our first warning sign might come in the form of a mushroom cloud. Mushroom cloud, like he had nuclear weapons. He barely threw his slippers at us. The problem wasn't Saddam Hussein and his weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist. The problem is when you went to go occupy the country for oil, then the people of Iraq said, hey, you know what, we're not interested in that. That was a different problem that we created. Well, was Saddam Hussein working with Al-Qaeda to do 9/11? Absolutely not. Every single report on that has proven conclusively, and in fact, even Bush has admitted, yes, of course, he didn't do 9/11. We never said he did 9/11. We just kind of implied it with every other sentence that we spoke, and sometimes flat out said it. But now they admit, yes, it wasn't 9/11 either. So what in the world did we get for it? Now, when Dennis Kucinich said that it might have been the oil near the beginning of the war, he was called a fool and a demagogue by even so-called liberal pundits on the Washington Post. Richard Cohen said that. And he said, thank God that Richard Perle, who's a neocon warmonger who helped start the Iraq War, was there on Meet the Press to answer Kucinich and to call him a liar to his face. So, well, obviously it wasn't the oil. What's interesting, though, is that David Frum, who was one of the top neocons, who was in the Bush administration, who wrote the line, the axis of evil that Bush delivered, says this curious admission, quote, in 2002, Chalabi joined the annual summer retreat of the American Enterprise Institute near Vail. Now, Chalabi's the guy, of course, who the neocons wanted to put in as the new leader of Iraq. He and Cheney spent long hours together contemplating the possibilities of a Western-oriented Iraq, an additional source of oil, an alternative to U.S. dependency on an unstable-looking Saudi Arabia. So maybe it was the oil. Now remember 2002, well before the war in 2003. And there's Cheney meeting with the guy that they believe they're going to install as a puppet. It didn't work out that way. Talking for hours about the Iraqi oil. Gee, I wonder what it was about. Well, then you go to Chuck Hagel, who happens to be our Secretary of Defense right now. Back in 2007, as a Republican senator from Nebraska, he said, quote, people say we're not fighting for oil. Of course we are. They talk about America's national interest. What the hell do you think they're talking about? We're not there for the figs. Now that's about the most honest comment I've ever seen on Iraq. That's why the Republicans tried to block him to be Obama's Secretary of Defense, because they're like, that guy's actually honest. How about Alan Greenspan, the head of the Federal Reserve, back then? Quote, "I am saddened that it is politically inconvenient to acknowledge what everyone knows. The Iraq War is largely about oil." All right, well, those are outsiders. They didn't necessarily make the decisions on the ground. The head of Central Command in charge of Iraq, our General John Abizaid, he wouldn't say that, right? Quote, "Of course it's about the oil. It's very much about the oil, and we can't really deny that." Well, that would seem to settle it. By the way, in the 10th anniversary of the Iraq War today, bombings lit up Iraq, 65 dead, many more injured. The bombings have never really stopped. We just stopped paying attention to them. The civil war in Iraq has never really quite stopped. Yes, it's gotten a little better than the absolute bloodbath back in 2006. But it's not over. The Sunnis still hate the Shias still hate the Sunnis, and neither one of them likes the Kurds. We stirred that pot up, and what do we get? And by the way, if we had gotten their oil for U.S. companies, what would that have meant? Would you have just gotten the oil? Would your gas be cheaper? No, you wouldn't have gotten the oil. Our companies that fund these politicians would have gotten the oil and the profits. And the one set of companies that are clearly much more profitable after the war than before the war, the defense contractors. And people like Halliburton, who at the time had the subsidiary KBR, which got billions of dollars in no-bid contracts. And of course, everybody knows who ran Halliburton. That was the vice president who schemed about oil before the war with Ahmed Chalabi and wound up pushing President Bush and the rest of the country, willingly so with Bush and a lot of the other Republicans, into that Iraq war that wound up being a disaster for us, that killed us, our troops, our treasury. And now the Republicans, of course, turn around and say, oh, we have no money. Why? Because Dick Cheney spent it all in Iraq. Was it worth it? You'd have to be mental to think that it was. You'd have to be insane to think that. Or you'd have to be a defense contractor or an oil man or both, Dick Cheney and George W. Bush.